Hi, guys, and welcome to the Incredible Hulk podcast. And this time we are discussing a story from season 1 called The Beast Within, which was written by Karen Harris and Jill Sherman, who were regulars on the show throughout the run, more or less. Incidentally, I was very lucky to get an interview with Karen Harris, and you'll be able to hear that at the end of this podcast, so please stick around for that one. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of that. So yeah, that's cool. And it was directed by Kenneth Gilbert. I don't think he did many Hulks, that guy. I don't see his name popping up too much, but it starred, of course, Bill Bixby as Dr. David Banner, Lou Ferrigno as the Incredible Hulk, and Jack Colvin as Jack McGee, co-starring Caroline McWilliams as Dr. Claudia Baxter, Richard Kelton as Carl, and Dabbs Greer as Dr. Malone. And incidentally, I think it may have been one of the last roles he did, but I don't know if you guys remember Dabbs Greer as playing the older Tom Hanks in The Green Mile.
Yep.
And that was Dabbs Greer. That was just really cool. Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that one in there.
Well done, Bojangles.
Yeah, it was very, very good. Yeah. And a special appearance in this from the uncredited on screen, I think, but I did find out that it was him. George Barrows as Elliot the Gorilla.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, some of the camera angles in this, my God, that gorilla suit was very transparent.
Yeah, it was it was quite, but it was a bulky old suit as well. It looked he looked very, I don't think the guy was big, but he looked kind of plump in that, yeah. So, guys, yes, welcome to the show, and welcome to my guests who are going to help me, my friends here. Please welcome Graham. How are you there?
And Frank, good to be back, mate. Always a pleasure whenever I can find the time.
And also, please welcome Sue and Alex. How are you both?
Rawr, good.
There we go.
Fine.
You're in form. You're in form again. You're on form, rather. Yeah. So, The Beast Within, yes, the early one in the run, in season 1, I mean.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. Although you could count it as episode 4 if you count the 2 pilots.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, because I think it's always been a bit weird, that one, because they were kind of like came out several months between one another. But some people still count them as part of season 1, I guess.
Well, that's true. But then again, some people count them as the 2 movies prior to the series. And
that's what, yeah. That's what I mean. It's a kind of a weird one, that, yeah. Anyway, we find David working at the zoo.
Yeah.
This one. Yeah. Talk us through, whoever wants to take this up, about the sort of setup of this story, and how it all begins and stuff.
Well, I'll put my top onto our fun to begin with here. It's feeding time at the zoo, and the companions go in 2 by 2. Basically, he's now I guess a janitor or a groundskeeper at the zoo, if you call it. All I needed the fact that he wants to get to know, the good doctor who's resident at the zoo during her experiments with, shall we say, anger management. And thanks for the kettle chips. So, an interesting theory. This is really early on in the run, and he stumbled upon a doctor who is studying the same things that he did before his alleged death, and she's basing a lot of her theses on his earlier works. So that's basically your setup, folks. Take it and run.
Very good. And yes, he had there was really a guy there, a guy, one of the older guys that works there. He was showing, so he only literally more or less arrived there, didn't he? Because he was just showing them the ropes.
It was his first day, yeah.
First time, yeah. Sometimes he's there for some stories several weeks or days, But he's literally very, very new at that.
I think technically this whole story takes place over the space of 2 days tops.
2 days tops, I'd say. Yeah. There's one night.
Yeah, it was his first day of work.
First day at work, yeah. So this nice man is showing around, showing the ropes, and he says to him, "Would you like to clean
out the weather cage?"
Yeah, would you like to clean out the reptile house? He said, "No, I think I'll give that a miss, mate."
There you go. Yeah.
You know, I'd rather go and see the lovely doctor in the gorilla sanctuary or the ape, you know, the chimp place.
Chimp sanctuary. Yep.
Yeah. Little knowing that, you know, there's more than a chimp in there. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a great big hairy gorilla in there.
Indeed.
I mean, you know, they obviously didn't have the budget to even stretch the Planet of the Apes proportions.
No, and unfortunately, we didn't get Jessica Lange's interpretation of King Kong at this point either. We got,
oh my gosh.
you know, we got Harry.
It was around about the same year, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. 78, 79 or something.
Yeah. So. Yeah, go
well,
there.
I mean, obviously, you know, they weren't going to have a full-on, you know, battle with a gorilla. Although I did find it very amusing that not only was the female doctor, the role that she's playing, the actress was on Soap, the TV show making fun of soap operas.
Yeah.
But she actually was in a real soap opera on television before that. And then the funny thing is, David Banner sort of does this Obi-Wan Star Wars thing, you know. Well, you know, he can't admit that he knows who David Banner is.
Oh, have you seen David Banner's work?
Yeah.
And then hands him a folder, and oh yes, and Alex.
Oh yeah, he goes. Oh yeah, I hear he's
chimes in. It's been years since I've been known by that name.
Yeah. So, or he can't do the Ben Kenobi Return of the Jedi thing. You know. Well, it is. I was telling you the truth from a certain point of view.
Wow.
You know. So.
I think in a roundabout way. You know.
Yeah.
But what I do find it interesting is you've got this whole subplot with David's trying to prize information out of the good doctor, where our animal friend and told us what Dr. Doolittle ate. But an interesting A plot. Meanwhile, on the B plot, animals are mysteriously dying, and there's potential hearings afoot by the board of directors at the zoo.
Yeah, David suggests because obviously he starts getting interested when she's talking about, you know, alternative aggression therapy or anti-aggression.
In animals, yep.
This is what it's got, you know, he's now keen to know whether he can actually try this on himself. Mm-hmm. And he suggests to her, and bearing in mind he has to pretend he's not Banner, you know, but he does seem to know an awful lot about what he's talking about for a janitor, you know, and it keeps raising alarm bells because he suggests trying radiation with the the ADG drug, I think it's called.
The ADG drug, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it version 4 she had? Was it version 4?
Yeah. This stuff, and which is what she's been trying on Elliot and some of the other animals as well. And it's been fairly successful. Yeah. So
you had that scene with the sternograph where they were showing Elliot the various pictures, and his mood set was quite steady.
Yeah, when he was looking at his own kind, he was calm, and then when he saw like a tiger or something, he might have just growled slightly. But he was in control, whereas normally he would probably go ballistic when he saw it, because he would see that as a threat, you know. And they meet Dr. Malone, Dabs Greer.
Yes, yeah, Malone.
And several, as you said, Graham, several animals have died recently there.
Yeah. Rather
mysteriously, and an inquest is going on at the moment. And then later, David sees Carl holding the chimp. Carl says he's adamant it's dead, but David says no. I think it's just in a comatose state. And they don't like the fact that he's been a bit too nosy, you know. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Malone sort of warns him off and says, "May I remind you of your duties," you know. So there's already a little bit iffy going on there. David's old radar is up, you know.
You fellow on campus, we know lackey. You know?
Yeah. And later, Elliot has been tranquilized.
Yep.
You know, with that stuff, and that's when you mention about that's when you mention about him being hooked up to the graph, watching all the animals. You know.
Yes.
And that's all good, and he's showing good signs there in that. David tells Claudia about the little chimp, and he believes it's not dead. And I think Malone and that are obviously getting a bit suspicious of David.
Yep.
He's getting to know a bit too much. And Carl says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of him." Ha 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 ha. That's the joke of the century.
Indeed, yeah.
Because that never works out. Yeah. And David reads the paper. This is where it comes into like when you know, some sort of idea of what might be happening with all these animals and that.
The cat smuggling ring. Yeah.
He's reading the paper there, and it says South African jewel theft.
Yep.
And more revelations come out, you know, about that later on.
And he finds out that all the animals that were in the zoo from South Africa were just recently brought there, and they're all the ones that are sick and dying.
Yes, that's right. Anyway, Carl meanwhile enters Elliot's cage when he's passive, you know, with that drug.
Yes.
And and injects him with the bad AGD, I guess, the aggressive part of it, and smashes the bottle in the process in the cage, and leaves the door open, and off he goes, you know, setting David up basically.
Yep.
Saying, "Oh, you got to go in there, mate. I'll take you over there." And the jeep. I think there's an accident over there or something.
Going up. Yep.
And he walks in the cage. He goes in the cage and he locks him in. And he won't listen to him. He's just about the key, and he says it's just there on the table. You know, no, and he's off
out the door.
But now, of course, this is when Elliot starts becoming aggressive.
Yep.
Playing
with a tire. Yep.
They're locked in there now, yeah, together. And I want you to tell me the bit where you spot the stuntman. Yeah.
I would say it was a bit where he hoisted the guy up on what was it he was holding? What was it Elliot was holding? And then the Hulk lifted up, and across the room went the stunt guy.
Yeah, Frank Cronogue, I believe.
Wasn't it a file cabinet?
No, he chucked the file cabinet up. Was something else. Was it a tree branch?
Oh yeah, part of that climbing tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he flips him around, doesn't he? You know, against the cage and that. You know, a couple of times.
Yep.
And there go the green eyes.
You know what? I this is one of the very few things I totally despise season 1 of this show for. I hate that overdubbed green glow on the face before and after the transformation. Thank God they get rid of that. It was like something out of Swamp Thing.
It was kind of weird, yeah. In fact, I'd say, yeah, they did do away with it later on, yeah.
Yeah.
For the better.
Well, yeah, maybe they were afraid it wasn't going to look scary enough, so they were trying to make sure that
but
you didn't see the obviously fake nose and stuff like that, but they were trying to hide it a little bit, I think.
So we get a battle of the beasts here.
Yeah.
And a lot of throwing around, and a lot of chest bumps. He bumps into him and he knocks him flying, and picks him up. I think at one point the Hulk does and throws him.
Yep, he does. Yeah.
Yeah, right over his head and that. So and each time, eventually, Elliot just calms. He just retreats. He thinks, no, I don't think I'm going to.
To hell with us, back into the cage.
Stop this. I'm going back in for a rest. Yeah, he's beaten basically. And maybe the drugs wearing off possibly as well. But,
that too, yeah.
Yeah, but he knows he hasn't really. He's up against it. And interestingly, as this is going on, and the Hulk's still sort of growling and that, in walks Claudia.
Yeah.
And actually sees the Hulk there and goes, "What the hell is happening?" And the Hulk, he busts out and gets away.
Yep.
Big hole in the wall, I think, or something.
The one thing I did notice about this episode, though, this was a really long stint as the Hulk after a period of exertion. I mean, you had the fight scenes with Elliot. Then he was roaming about the zoo, nicking peanuts off little girls, and it seemed to take forever the first Hulk out to finally get to the scene where he ends up back in the tiger den to metamorphosize back into David.
That's true. It was quite a while. Yeah, it did seem that way. Sometimes you've got that. It depends on the story form, I guess how much they had to tell, or how little, or what they needed to fill in. Or sometimes you would get a long Hulk section. Other times they would literally be on screen for a minute or two, and that's it.
I get why it was used here. They had to invoke panic at the zoo. They had to demonstrate that all the security guards and the cops were looking for him at the time to get to later on in the story when they end up in the warehouse with Malone and Carl and all that. I get that, but it was just seemed a bit weird to me. But hey, it made sense in the end.
Two things that echoed back from, I think, one that went echoed back to the pilot film was, and it's happened more than once. It was the encounter with the little girl. It was very much Frankenstein-esque.
Yeah.
We had that in the pilot where you see the girl at the lake. We got it again here with the girl, feeding the elephants, I think.
Yep. Dumbo, have a peanut.
And we've had it a few times since as well. There's a couple of encounters like that with worried parents screaming and running up, taking the child away, In this case, the woman going completely frantic and screaming, and the girl being completely calm and happy and saying bye-bye to him.
See you later, yeah.
He wasn't one bit phased, but the parent was having kittens.
Yeah.
The kid was perfectly fine. Also,
it was. Sorry, it was interesting how they were doing a little ode to Frankenstein, but then I said, "Oh, the Hulk isn't peeling off the peanuts; he's just shoving it in his mouth."
There you go.
So what? His teeth doesn't care about the shell. So what? His jaw is 900 pounds of pressure. It's got.
It must be. Yeah. Think how big and strong he is. I guess his teeth are strong as well.
Yeah.
Let's just see it right through steel.
Yeah, because most humans don't have that kind of power unless they exercise. They don't have that kind of jawbone power. I think at most you can get maybe, like a regular punch, 300, and then if you train, you could do maybe 400.
There you go.
Pounds of pressure, but
the Hulk was kind of the jawbone, and the jawbone in his face was kind of meant to be sort of like Neanderthal, wasn't it? He was like the primitive human.
That's what the doctor had said also. The one played by Carolyn McCormack or whatever her name was. McWilliams. She was. She said that. She said that he had Neanderthal or Neanderthal characteristics.
So the joke of it is Hulk will eat the pizza box as well. Just leave everything there. He'll eat the car, the bag, the pizza box.
It's all protein.
I'm going to say, what is it with things that are green and eat pizza? I mean,
green pizza? No thanks, mate.
No. What is it with humanoid reptiles that are green that eat pizza? It just seems to be a trope.
Oh, I see where you're going.
the Ninja Turtles, eh?
About turtle power here, yeah.
Good one,
very funny.
They
had
the jalapenos that does it,
yeah. They had the joke. We were watching Animaniacs, and the narrator was starting to talk about, the artist Leonardo and all that. And all of a sudden, on the right of the screen, you start seeing the turtles. It's the Ninja Turtles. And the narrator kind of rolls his eyes and goes, "Pop culture ruins everything."
Yeah, well, that's more money for Rob Paulson. Anyway, back to the episode.
Yeah, back to the Hulk.
Back to the other Greek fight machine.
Incidentally, another thing I want to point out here, because it was actually art mirroring life here, the section where you see the tour bus going through the thing, and the Hulk standing there growling at them, and they nearly crash. That was actually one of the Universal tour buses. When they used to take tourists around the Universal.
Yeah, but that scene, I enjoyed that scene, but I also found it stupid as well. It's like, rah, and then they're just going, and next minute the wee tour bus goes around, and you have this stupidest looking wee crash bump.
They go into a little dip, don't they? But basically that's what that was. It was like part of the Universal tour. That they did. I don't know. I don't think they do it anymore, but back then it was usually popular. And that's when they used to have the claws shark coming out of the water there and all that. Do you remember all those things?
78, wasn't it?
78, yeah.
No, we were 75 movies, so maybe they might have had that up and running by then.
Yeah. So that was a hugely popular thing. So they kind of put it into the story, you know.
Well, the Jaws shark looked better than some of the effects on this thing today, I'll tell you.
Well, I mean, of course, you know, now they have the Hulk movies, but the Hulk looks more like a cartoon, you know, character. But unfortunately, while Lou Ferrigno was very built, he wasn't, you know, 8, 9 feet tall like he was in the comic books where he's jumping around and all that, you know.
Lou Ferrigno, by Mace standards, is actually a midget compared to Mace folk.
I think Lou was only about 6'4", 5", I think.
I don't think he was even that.
No, I know he was taller than Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
That is a well-known fact, because they were up for the casting at the same time for the Hulk, you know.
Yeah.
And Schwarzenegger was shorter. I don't know how much shorter, not much maybe, but
not much.
Certainly shorter than Lou, you know.
Come on, you can do it. Yeah.
But he's supposed to be like, you know, in the series, they often refer to him as like a 7 foot tall creature or something. So he's supposed to be at least 7 foot tall, you know.
Well, like we just said, you know, that's probably why they tried to do that greenish, you know, tint or whatever on the face, because unfortunately they knew that if you were a fan of the Hulk, you were comparing it to the comics, but they didn't have the, you know, the budget to do like when the Hulk did like the flying jumps. In the TV show, he did do jumps, but they weren't flying jumps most of the time because they didn't have the you know, the budget to have like, you know, 6 cameras and CGI and, you know, all that like they do now.
Look on the bright side.
Yeah. But it still was very good.
On the bright side, we didn't get an episode like Lee Major's Goal with Andre the Giant as the abominable, whatever the hell it was, you know? I mean, yeah. Was it Bigfoot?
That actually was really good. And sadly, he only did the one, because they brought that back again with the Bionic Woman.
Yeah.
But interesting, and here's another parallel to the Hulk. The new guy playing Bigfoot was none other than Ted Cassidy.
There you go.
The guy that does the intro to the Hulk on every episode, you know, Dr. David Banner. And did the Hulk growls as well, you know.
Well, yeah, because... Sorry, Graham, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, do you think at the end of the night, at the end of recordings, they went to the bar with the Sundance Kid?
Butch Cassidy, yeah. Anyway, Dr. Malone has suspended Dr. Baxter. What a bastard.
Yes.
Because because she knows too much probably, but...
he wants his money.
And wants her out of the way until after the hearings, which she won't let her be privy to. So they're all corrupt to start with, you know. David tells Claudia to do blood tests on Elliot. Because he does. So and tells her he was injected with that stuff and attacked him, you know. And he bets the results will show up positive if they do a test. And here comes McGee.
Oh, yeah, for his cameo at the end of every episode, yeah.
Come to question Claudia. And first of all, she's very reluctant to go out there and up front. But David persuades her you've got to make a start somewhere. You've got to do this. And so she goes out. And it's interesting that McGee, you know, how pushy he is, hears like a growl from behind the door, and so busts in thinking it's the Hulk, and it's Elliot.
Easy mistake to make there, McGee. You know, but.
No, like I said, you know, it does sort of remind me of the fact that, you know, and again, the technology has changed, and then you had different, you know, directors and all that.
I must say, though, just a quick observation. Would this one float today with the whole WWF people, with the whole insinuation of cruelty to animals?
Yeah.
It was certainly to do with illegal
smuggling. Yeah,
smuggling of animals, which of course is, you know, is still a thing.
Well, that's still illegal to this day. What I meant was the inference that, you know, animals were being basically killed to smuggle gems. I mean,
well, that's the horrific thing about that. What David discovers is that was highly suggesting, and I think it was.
I guess to flip the question, would you get away with an episode like that today?
No. Also,
exactly.
would you get away, and with the technology we've got now, you wouldn't even get away with being able to put them
Granted,
in an animal's stomach or a human
you could
stomach.
do it in a CGI animal, but you still wouldn't get away with it based on the inference. So it's like,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
mean,
Well,
the security
no,
now I don't think it would even they wouldn't be able to do what they could do then,
Yeah.
smuggling. Security is much hotter now.
yeah.
Technology is better for X-raying. I doubt that could ever happen now, really. But I mean, it was happening with humans back then as well. I mean, humans were ingesting cocaine.
Okay, they're still doing that today, though.
Yeah, I mean, that is really dangerous because if they burst in your stomach, you're dead, man.
Yeah. That's why you know protection.
No, Graham. The terms of the legal, they changed that, and they had to change the acronym because it was too similar.
Yeah.
Now that's where they're coming from. They're coming from South Africa.
And then pops Big Caraway's gun.
And he steps saying, now you know too much, don't you? Come with us. Come with me into the warehouse.
Come with me if you want to live for at least half an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, he was trying to kill him. Well, trying to kill David.
He said for at least half an hour.
Yeah. So in they go in the thing, and they get tied to David gets tied to a sort of post, and Malone really deep down, I don't think is that villainous. He really has been put into this situation, hasn't he?
He's conflicted, though.
He's very conflicted. Yeah, you could see he's going, God, I can't kill someone.
I just want my money.
Yeah. Inject him with some of that stuff. If half of that did something to Elliot, just think what it's going to do to him.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. And it takes Claudia away, sort of struggling with her.
Yeah.
And leaves Malone.
The lion.
To feed into the lion. Yeah.
We probably should touch upon the shall we say, I guess their go-to guy, the African gentleman who was providing the funds. I mean, he just sort of weaved in and out of their story before I don't even think he had a name, did he?
Not that I remember. I think he was only in that one scene when they were talking together.
Yeah, the scene where they were observing the zebra.
Yeah.
And then the scene in the warehouse.
Yeah. So he was funding it. He was the
he was the benefactor, basically.
Yeah. God. Yeah. So it was very nasty stuff was happening there, and Malone now is, of course, approaching David with the lethal dose. And a wonderful line here from
green glow.
But a wonderful line from Bill just before he's changing. He goes, "For God's sake, don't do it!" And then the eyes are going, and he busts out and inadvertently knocks Malone out by accident because
breaks the needle. So.
Yeah, the thing goes pop. Yeah, the ropes and it knocks him backwards. So anyway, he goes off to find Claudia.
Yeah.
And would you like to take? Anyone want to take this one up?
Well, it's basically a race against time. Get to the car before she becomes lion cow, and the one thing I didn't quite get when Carl dragged her out to the lion's den and basically laid her out. Did he drug her? Because she seemed to lie there basically, and her eyes were kind of glazed while the Hulk was infiltrating.
I thought he hit her in the head.
Oh, did he hit her in the head? Because I remember she was on about her foot, so I wasn't sure,
Yeah, she seemed a bit dazed, didn't she? A little bit out of it. And I was wondering that myself, actually. Maybe he did sort of clock her one on the head or something.
Yeah.
As he dragged her out, just to kind of keep her quiet. Because she was struggling and writhing, I guess he just wanted to keep her quiet, Yeah. But, just think for a second, the thought that he was going to throw her into a lion's den is pretty crackers.
Well, to be fair, that was a solid plan. That lion hadn't been fed by the circus for years.
Yeah. But anyway, the Hulk comes to the rescue. There he is, all solid. The Green Man's coming, yeah. So anyway, he and sorts out, Carl, throws him into a monster.
At first, I thought that was a crocodile's lake or something, but it wasn't. It was just I was like, oh.
Do you imagine that happened by mistake?
Yeah.
By crocodile.
Or alligators even,
Alligators. That would have just been, oh, man. Talk about bad luck.
There you go.
Yeah,
That would have been the ultimate irony.
that
Yeah.
would have been. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
been trying to feed out to lions, and he gets eaten by alligators. Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah, so that's but anyway, it cooled him off a bit, didn't it? And the Hulk's very tenderly lifts Claudia up and places her on the jeep. Yeah.
And then runs a mile when the cops arrive.
The cops come. That's always his alert to get out of there. Yeah. He doesn't like the cops.
No.
Yeah, he doesn't get on very well with them. Yeah, or rather, they don't with him. But anyway, that was kind of it. And
well, apart from the fact that Claudia's now the chief operator at the zoo, she's got Malone's office and job apparently by the end of this.
she has. So every cloud, as they say. Yeah.
Yes, and
I'm
you
very,
also
very
have,
proud of her. She did get injured, didn't she? She's got like a
she
her
done
arm,
her
yeah.
leg in, and he
leg, yeah.
signed her cast and left a little, shall we say, antidote for the next part of her experiment.
Yeah, he said, don't forget to collect something or other. Yeah.
He said, don't forget to check the gamma. When you gamma radiate this certain one, don't forget to check that one.
There you go.
And the interesting thing is that David left her with his entire research. He didn't take his research with him.
Well, she already had it.
He
before
left
he arrived.
it with her.
She already had his research before he arrived.
Right. But he didn't steal it or make off with it or try to erase it.
Yeah,
or burn it in front of her or something.
Yeah, and
he just left her with all of his research. And as he's done with a few of the others in the series.
Never once did he reveal that he was Banner to her either. No. Sometimes he does when he's under pressure like that, all found out a bit. But he didn't in this case. He kept his cool,
Well, this was still early days, so.
Yeah.
But for an early in the run episode, wasn't it bad? Got him up.
It was all good apart from the poor old Elliot, which is not realised very well.
Yeah, it kind of took you at the moment, especially when they were batting the tyre back and forth in the cage. I'm going, oh God.
But I mean, what can you do when you just haven't got the budget that can properly? It's so difficult, isn't it? When you're trying to do an animal or whatever, it's never going to be that convincing, is it?
No.
No, you don't really want to use a real orangutan or gorilla. You just want to.
You couldn't trust a real gorilla in that setting.
Right.
Yeah. You couldn't. I mean, that's a very close environment as well,
Sure.
In a jungle like forest setting, perhaps with a limited crew, but no in a studio or a backlog or something like that,
Sure.
But all in all, I mean, apart from that kind of like sort of take, as you said, it does take you a little bit out of it sometimes with the ape, but the story premise was good about the smuggling, all this stuff going on. It was like addressing like real things that were happening,
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 subplots within the one episode, so you couldn't really grumble.
Yeah. So all in all, guys, what bits did you just give us a summarization of Beast Within?
I love Carolyn McWilliams' character, and I love her as an actress. She kind of like, super shines on the screen. She steals the screen. It's fun. It's fun watching that. I loved watching Soap with her in it. We were watching because Katherine Hellman passed away, and then we saw Carolyn McWilliams as the paramour of the Campbell men. So anyway, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I did enjoy this, talking about Bruce Banner, where he doesn't admit that he's Bruce Banner. And I guess the villains were good considering that they weren't given a lot of screen time. So it was sort of interesting. I guess they had sort of an interesting cast. I didn't enjoy the Hulk eating peanuts without taking off the shell. But no, it's not something that I would say, I have to watch that episode again. But like I said, it was somewhat enjoyable. but I'm not a huge animal fan, so it's not a huge.
Well, that's really,
it was an interesting idea and had some interesting lines, and it was kind of interesting seeing, David when he was changing back, trying to crawl around and get out of the cages and such. So
yeah, because Mama wasn't that far away, was she? Mama Tiger.
Oh yeah.
She only seemed to be across a little pond there, so she could easily have leapt over and got. I mean, he was actually in that. What's interesting about that? That wasn't a stuntman. That was Bill Bixby in that enclosure with the adult over there. That didn't look like split screen to me.
Well, to be fair, they probably had some ringers holding the main tiger back behind the camera, So.
Well, like I said, that was also, that's one of the reasons why I like watching stuff pre-1990s is because they didn't have CGI with everything. So, it did sort of give your mind a little bit of a game to figure out, is that real? Is that a camera trick?
No, but with regards to your previous question, Frank, I'll be a monkey's uncle. For 50 minutes, I enjoyed this. Okay, we've discussed aspects of it, wasn't exactly the best, but the premise was good, as you mentioned. Claudia was great. Bill and Lou were on point as ever. There's very rarely an episode where I go, I was kind of disappointed with one or the other there. They always seem to do a bang-up job. Carl, for me, was a bit of I don't know, he seemed to be like the Bluto type character out of Popeye, where he just seemed to be the lumbering muscle there when he, other than the fact that he was driven by greed for money, there wasn't really a purpose to him, except he was the muscle for the South African benefactor guy. So,
and somebody had to, get the diamonds out of the animals.
Oh, there's a thought. Didn't want to have it. I'm just about to go and have my tea. Thanks, Sue.
Oh yeah. Are you just going to have a Turret's tea cake? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you're all right. You're all right. I'll just put on the white gloves and think happy thoughts.
We do not endorse the bad treatment of animals.
Hell no. We don't want PETA or the WWF getting on our case. So no, you're all right.
Yeah, don't you have an upset stomach? You might go green. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, I thought it was rather good. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
And I hope you all enjoyed this, guys, listening. Please stick around in a moment for my interview with none other than one of the writers of this, Karen Harris. The other, of course, is Gil Sherman, but Gil Sherman now is retired and she's enjoying her life as privately. So I couldn't get Gil to join us, but it's great to have one of them.
Yeah.
At the very least, it's good to hear that both are still with us.
They're both with us, very much so, and enjoying themselves and stuff. And thank you, of course, for joining me, my friends here. Thank you, Graham.
Always a pleasure, mate.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you, Alex.
As always, great fun.
We were discussing the season 1 story called The Beast Within on this particular recording. So I'm delighted to have one of the writers of that story. Generally, you would see, this lady's name along with another lady's name, who was Gil Sherman, and that they were a mainstay of the series throughout. And I'm really, really delighted that I get to speak to one of them here. So please welcome Karen Harris to the show. How are you, Karen?
Oh, I'm very well. I'm very well. A little bit. We're having spring in Los Angeles, so the flowers are blooming. And after all that wonderful rain we had to end our drought, suddenly the flowers have gone mad. We had an influx of butterflies from the California-Mexico border. Caterpillars ate well this spring, and they usually fly north, but they flew over California and saw just a plethora of beauty down here, and they've been hanging around. So everywhere you look, there's bunches of butterflies flying around.
Oh, that's really that's lovely. Beautiful. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I've got quite a lot to cover with you, Karen, because we had a little pre-talk on here about certain things I need to get answers to. I need to get you to clarify a few things because I'm a little bit confused. But first of all, I'm a Brit, and indeed you are, or were.
I am.
Because you were born in Oxfordshire in England.
I was born in Oxford.
Oxford, yeah.
My mother and all of her siblings. My mother was the youngest of 10. She was born in London. Actually, she was born I think in Brighton, but her grandma was there on vacation, on holiday. But my mother was the youngest of 10, so I have tons of cousins all of the aunties and uncles are gone now, but tons of cousins in London. And during the war, all of the sisters and their spouses and the brothers and their spouses moved to Oxford to get away from the bombing. And my folks stayed there. And eventually I came into the picture. And then we came to America in a year I'm not going to name because it will identify my age. And that's important. But it was quite a long time ago. And I was 2 when I came over. But yeah, it was Oxford. I don't have too much of a memory of it, but I've been back and it's lovely. And I kept my British citizenship for a long time because I work on Canadian shows and Australia and New Zealand and all these things that share the UK passports that are recognized. So, and I got to do over the last 2 decades a number of EU shows as well. And I also have my US passport and this is where I am. Although these days I'm thinking about moving because it's not fun to be here, but it's hardly fun to be anywhere, including.
Oh God, yeah, that's true. Yeah, even over here, Karen. To be honest, without getting political here, it's not that much fun here either.
No, I was there last month. The nice thing for me when I go to London, though, because I usually go for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Last time I was there for, I think, 10 days on my way back I went to London and then I was in London to see some theater. One of my cousins is a costume designer and he did the new Fiddler on the Roof at the Menier Chocolate Factory.
Oh, brilliant.
That Sir Trevor Nunn directed, and it's transferring to the West End, which is exciting. But anyway, I could feel some of the tension, but when I'm there, I feel like it doesn't have much to do with me. So I get to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
We'll see if this sorts itself out and I'll be back again soon. So
you, and indeed, Jill Sherman, are kind of synonymous with the Hulk in many ways, because often you switch on, watch an episode and up would pop, written by Karen Harris and Jill Sherman,
or Jill Sherman and Karen Harris. We would alternate.
Yeah, or produced by the said 2 ladies.
Right.
So you were very prominent in the throughout the run. Your presence was felt.
We were consistent in our presence. Yes.
Yeah. So, Karen, please explain one big question I have. It says that you shared 12 episodes, co-writing credits or co-writing credits. How? Who did what? I mean, because it always just says written by you, both of you. But as to the input, who was it? Very, pretty much level, equal ground, or were one of you just sort of ideas, and then the other, either you or Jill would finish the script?
Well, here's what. If I may, I'll give you an overview of how what our part was in on the show, on the series, and then I can explain how this happened. We teamed up. We were a writing team. We'd known each other since junior high school, which is the 9th grade, we were 13. Oh. And Jill was writing for a magazine and I was in television production and I was doing publicity for record companies and rock and roll. And we were both, sort of in different versions of entertainment. She was reviewing movies for a Palm Springs television station. Palm Springs is the fancy desert outside of LA.
Yes. Yeah.
And she came to me at one point and said, look, I was freelancing as a production assistant and associate producer, and I worked at our public television station and that sort of thing, sort of on the periphery and feeling our way. We were in our early 20s. mid-20s at this point. And she said, I have a lot of ideas, and you know structure because you type scripts for a living. Because in between gigs, in between production jobs, I would make $5 an hour writing, typing scripts for writers before computers. So yes, that's how old it is. And so I had learned structure, and I had some mentorship from a couple of well-known writers, a Canadian writer who was nominated for an Oscar, and some other people, and I gotten some support. I thought you were born knowing you were a writer, and that wasn't the case for me. I didn't believe that I was meant to be. I was a writer's assistant. I worked for producers as their right hand, producer writers. In the States, in television, writing and producing go hand in hand. Feature films are a director's medium, where the director's in charge. And television, producers stay for the duration generally, unless they go on to something else, but they stay for the duration of the show. And directors come and go every week. You hire a different director for every show. So so coming in as a team of writers meant, and by the way, what Jill said to me at the time was, with your knowledge of structure and my ideas, we could make one whole writer. So that's
yeah.
And we wrote several spec scripts so that we could present them to agencies and stuff. We had a few connections at studios, so that, for example, at Universal, someone that I'm fairly close to, who was an executive, who said, I'll get your material to agents for you so that you can, because it's very difficult to get in. I really did have a leg up on that, which, but you have to use your connections. We both grew up in LA. You know people, you go to school with people, you have family, who goes into the industry. So you have to take advantage of that. It's not cheating. It's really being smart, and using your connections, because as my connection said, I opened the door, but she pushed through it and kept on going without any help from me. So anyway, we had it after writing specs and going on meetings and finally getting an agent, a small boutique agency, and we got a call from Universal Studios saying that there was a pilot of a new show, and the executive producer, Ken Johnson, who had worked on had created Bionic Woman and worked on $6 Million Man and was a rising star at the studios, was doing very well. He loved working with young writers, and he loved working with women writers. But that, he liked opening the door for that.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Without having an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So we went to a screening of this show, and funnily enough, and I'll try not to make this last forever, but it might be entertaining. Funnily enough, I'd been to a psychic previously, and the psychic had said a lot of things that were quite accurate, and she had said, she sort of identified that I had started writing. She said, I see that around you, however she identified, with a typewriter or whatever. She said, and I see a TV screen pulsing green. And I said, oh, maybe that means I'm going to make a lot of money. The green is money. So when I saw the Hulk, when Jill and I went to the screening of the pilot of the Hulk, with about probably 15 other writers had been called into the same screening to see it and then see what ideas we could come up with. And I saw the TV pulsing green, and I said to Jill, oh my God, maybe that's what that meant. So it was really quite lovely. It was wonderful. The other thing is, that was during the days it was in the late, really the cusp of the 70s and the 80s. It was like 1979/80. And she had, and in those days, being a freelance writer was quite a good living. There were people who wrote, would write for 3 or 4 different shows, an episode for a different show, and get reputations. And sometimes they'd get offered staff jobs, and sometimes they just went from show to show. Christy Brinkley's father, a guy named Don Brinkley, used to write a pilot a year, and he was perfectly happy. He made a very nice living writing a pilot and getting paid and being under contract. And one year he sold the show, and he said, my life has been ruined because I now have to work every day. So anyway, but So we were all there to pitch freelance episodes, and most of the names you're going to see in the Hulk, other than the opening in the first season and all of the seasons, you'll start to see some repetition of names. Sometimes they were just people that that we would keep returning to give scripts to, and sometimes they were people that came on staff, like Andrew Schneider. Became our story editor at one point. Anyway, that being said, so Jill and I went in, and this is the truth of it, and this might lead us right into, we went in, we pitched, this is as simple as it was, the Hulk at a zoo. And Kenny said, I love it. Come up with a story and bring it back to me. And so we walked away saying, that may have been our first sale, and saying, if we just get the story credit, we've done something huge here. Yeah. But we came to the idea for The Beast Within, which we're going to talk about in a little while. I know specifically, and and they came back to us for 2 or 3 more scripts that season. They had a story editor. They kept saying, we didn't have enough experience. Although I had experience as a producer. I had associate produced and produced at our public television station and some variety shows, minimally, early, like entry level producing. But by the second season, when we got a call after the first, which was a half season, because we did Beast Within, and oh my goodness, I think we did. Wasn't Alice in Discoland. I know we did a full rewrite on Stop the Presses, but I can't remember if there was another one they gave. The horse racing one.
Rainbow's End.
Rainbow's End. That was all in the first season. And out of that, we got Stop the Presses was second season. Out of those 2 shows, they were so happy with them that we got a call saying, will you come on staff and be story editors? So, and we can go into more of that down the line, but that's how we broke in. Our writing process was very much hand in hand for the first 3 years. We were a team. They paid us as a team. We were a team as producers, which is the 2 levels up as writer producers is what we were. I'll tell you as we go along what those functions were. But we did I keep looking at your picture on my Skype page, and your expression hasn't changed, and I realize it's because you're not live. It's a still photo. But I'm having a very nice conversation with you. You're an attentive listener, Frank.
Yeah. It's opening my eyes, you see, because we are not privy, to really what you both did as such. We see the credits, we think, oh, it was written by you two, you and Jill. Or produced by you and Jill, and think, it's just lovely that you were such a mainstay of it, and we don't really think beyond what actually was involved,
Yeah, and it gets juicier. What the actual process was that we would split it up. Like I would take the first half, and she would take the second half, and we had it well outlined. We always, we broke the story together. We would take it in, pitch it to the team, the producing writing team, the higher ups, and they would say, "Oh, how about this?" Or "Did you think of that?" Or it'd be cool is, and somebody would come up with a line, and we'd write it down, and then we'd go back and we'd break it up either into, I do Act 1 and Act 3, and she do 2 and 4, or some variation on that. So we both had our hands in it, and then we would trade our acts. And I would go through hers and do changes and adjustments and, get ideas. And she would do the same with mine. And we compile it as one and then go through together and make sure that it was as well as we could, seamless. And then same thing when we get notes, we'd sit together and do the notes. We actually literally, those were the days of cutting and pasting. We'd sit on the floor with Scotch tape and with cellophane tape and a scissors and cut stuff and paste it onto a new piece of paper. That's where the cut and paste comes from.
Right. Yeah.
That's what we would do. And then turn in a clean copy, and they'd send it to Mimeo, and Mimeo would, whatever. So that's how we wrote, except that at some point along the way, so season 1 we're story editors, season 2 we're executive story editors. Which is giving us a bump and an acknowledgement of our participation, because this is where they'd rather not pay you, they'd rather give you a title. It's like you get a little bit more because the Writers Guild has negotiated that for you, and you get to be executive story editors. And then the next year, when we proved ourselves as executive story editors, Kenny Johnson, who did love to nurture young writers, and had us, we would alternate scripts. We went together the first year, but we would alternate in the second year, not the writing of them, but sort of learning how to be producers. So I would say, all right, I'll take, Alice in Discoland, and now that it's written and everybody likes it, and I will go out on the location scout, and I'll do the director's meeting, and I'll be in on casting, and and then she would have the next one that we wrote together, which would have her name at the top. And she would say, that she would go out on the location scout with the DP, the director of photography, the director, the head of transportation, the production designer, and the stunt coordinator. We'd all go out, that's who was in that van going out all over the city of LA. Mm. So we alternate, and that's how we learned about producing, for a dramatic television show. And then we would spend our weekends on that. So that would become sort of my show, in that I was, babying it along through the production process. When the shooting was finished, we'd both go to dailies. We'd both have our comments. Dailies was where you went to see yesterday's material that was shot. You'd see how it looked, and we didn't get that angle, or we need that angle, and that sort of thing. And then we would go in post-production. We would do the same thing, which is that I would take, let's just say for argument's sake, the Alice in Discoland, and I would go sit with the editors on weekends and watch them edit the show. And I learned post that way. We would go to the scoring session where Joe Harnell would lead, an orchestra in scoring the show. And then we would go to color correction, all the elements of producing. And that's how we became producers on the show. In the third year, it was us. I think Andy Schneider was our executive story editor. He'd come in the year before under us. And Ruben Leader was our story editor, and loved them both. Jill and I were progressing along nicely. And this is the behind the scenes studio politics, which I'm happy to let you in on. They were getting us for the price of one person. A team gets paid as one.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had two young men working for us who were making twice as much as either of us. And by now we were truly producing, and we had also become we realized we were each individually a very good writer, or certainly good for the show. So we took a stand. Jill actually, as always, was the brave one. I tend to be a little more of a people pleaser, but she was the one that said, this won't stand. They need to hire us separately. We need to be able to, we weren't breaking up our partnership because we didn't like each other or didn't get along. It was for either pay us double as a team or pay us as individual producer writers. Yeah. So that's eventually, it took literally her walking out the door and saying, I'm not coming back. And then I couldn't, because of my connection at the studio had risen up, and I couldn't put him in a compromising position by telling the studio to F off,
Yeah.
So I had to play it a little more safe, and that's also my that time in my life I was a little more safe. That was more of my my style. But I was a team player. But I absolutely supported her in doing it, and supported the idea that the two of us would now be able to be recognized and acknowledged for our individual worth as well as for our team worth. So that's happened in season 3. So then you'll start seeing our names individually on scripts. We did do 2 scripts, and the reason we knew we could do it is because at the beginning of season 3, and I can't remember all the dates and stuff, but there was a show that Brenda Benet was in, Bill Bixby's ex-wife. It was Psychic. It was called
Psychic. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And there was another one that she wrote that on her own, but both our names were on it. I can't remember. It wasn't King of the Beach had just my name on it. That was my.
Yeah, that was your name only. Yeah.
But there was another one that I wrote that she and I still shared credit on. So we were now saying, we can write twice as many scripts, because you can write on your own and I can write on my own, and we still get to put both our names. But ultimately, I don't know if it was ego or just a sense of pride in our work that we wanted to have the separate credits for that work we actually did. But we were able to start writing. We were so in tune with each other. We were able to start writing separately, and people couldn't really tell the difference between those. I don't think. Maybe they could, but between those scripts and the ones we wrote by ourselves and the ones that we wrote as a team. But we wrote as a team definitely for the first, I would say the first at least 2.5 years. And then there was 3 and 4. And then I moved on to a different show at Universal, and Jill stayed on the Hulk. There was a sort of a turnover that she was mentored. She had someone else there. I can't remember who it was. Well, Nick Correa was her mentor there. And I had Jim Hirsch, and also, but Nick, anyway, it was, that's how we sort of evolved and then moved on. By the way, we're having dinner next Sunday. I mean, we're very close still. We see
that's great. Yeah.
All the time. We're still great friends. We went to our high school reunion a couple of months ago in October. So we're still very, very close. There was, over all those years, there's going to be like a 3-year period of like not speaking, but mostly it was fine. It was just great. And we had a good time. He contributed much to my development as a writer, and I hope the same is true in reverse. And I stayed on. She met her husband, Robert Donner, on one of the episodes. The man she eventually married. Robert Donner was an actor who was in quite well known for being in Mork and Mindy. He was the crazy preacher. He always played crazy preachers.
Yeah.
And the show he was in, I think it was called Carnival. Was that the name of one of the episodes?
He did two. He did two, actually. Funny enough, I was just watching one of his yesterday. I was just going through episodes. Yeah. It was called Sideshow.
Sideshow, that's what it was. Not
Carnival. And then he did one called The Phenom, about the baseball player. Yeah.
Right. And that was after I had left at that point. That was the very last of the series, and Jill was still on, and they were married by then, which was great. Yeah. But the first time was the first time they ever met. They met on Sideshow, and he played the crazy priest,
Right. Yeah.
And it was, we didn't write that one, but we were producers now, so we got to be on the set and all that stuff. So it was great fun. But that was her husband. I'm afraid he passed away, sadly. 7 or 8, 9. Oh God, I can't even remember when. It's quite a while. But she worked quite a bit. She did the She-Hulk, and I worked on a couple of the Hulk revival sort of things, but and she did other stuff as well. We both had very nice careers. But she had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him, and so I think made that choice at one point that she'd rather be with him and sort of back burner the writing stuff. It just becomes hard to pitch yourself and sustain a career. It really does, no matter how good you are. And Jill's excellent.
So is Jill still is Jill back at writing, or is she kind of retired now, or?
Oh, she's retired, and she's working on, there's certain things you might have done. It was so funny, and this might be a nice segue. And that show, I have to give credit that Beast Within was so much of Jill's personality and her priorities. She's a big animal advocate, and works a lot with, taking care of animals that need it. And she also works at a soup kitchen giving food. She's working on great charities to help people who didn't have what we had, which is wonderful. We both sort of have that commitment to paying it forward. So I work with military veterans, teaching them to write through the Writers Guild Foundation, which is one of my favorite things that I do. But I'm still continuing for some reason. I don't know if it's an ego thing. I can't quite let go of continuing to sort of break ground for me. So we can get into that later. But anyway, but that might be a good segue into, I understand that you want to talk about The Beast Within.
Yes. Now, this, of course, was your first time you both had written for the show.
It's the first time, by the way, that we had sold anything. This was our first sale in television. And I kid you not, I said it earlier, this came out of a pitch that was the Hulk at a zoo. Now, by the third season, we needed a lot more descriptive and outlined ideas. But in the early days, the Hulk at a zoo, the Hulk in a boxing ring, the Hulk at an airport, those were all sort of like, it was like a find an arena and then put David Banner in it and see what comes out.
Yeah. I just looked up, I was just curious actually, because I'm a stickler for these sort of trivia things, but I looked up because I was wondering who played Elliot the gorilla. And
was it?
And I have actually, I've got his name here. Hold on a
second. Was it Monty Cox?
Where is it now? It was a man called George Barrows.
Oh, I don't know him.
Yeah.
But I looked at it. I mean, he may have been a very good actor, but the gorilla suit was terrible. Looked like it was all flea bitten and
He looked really chubby gorilla as well. Yeah. Big behind on it.
Elliot the gorilla. Well, one of the lessons we learned on this show was we remember writing in the script. I remember the first we'd written in the script. Her lab had shelves full of colored glass bottles. It was just something you write. And we walked onto the set and there were shelves full of colored glass bottles. And we said, oh God, we got to be careful what we put on the page because they're going to take us literally.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like a perfume shop more than a lab.
They have to say, like, don't work with children and animals. But you went a bit further and had an actor playing an animal. So,
Well, I'm not sure which is worse, an animal or an actor playing an animal. Then you've got...
Yeah, what's worse? Yeah. So yeah, that was the guy that played the gorilla. Yeah.
Right.
So I was just very curious about that,
Yeah.
Because he was uncredited, so his name wasn't on the screen, so I had to look it up. So.
Elliot Gorilla as himself.
I didn't check to see what else he did, but there was a little picture which I didn't sort of blow up to have a look at. I just was quickly looking,
That's
on the
so
list
funny.
there. So yeah, I think he may have done other things, obviously. Probably stunt work mainly, I would think. And so here we are, and this one was directed by Kenneth Gilbert. What do you remember about Kenneth?
I remember he was a rather large, sort of hulking guy himself, Ken Gilbert. He was a sweet man. I don't remember much about him. I don't remember. He may have done a couple more episodes that first season. I don't remember. I honestly don't. I mean, we were so excited to have our first show. We weren't on staff, so we really only got to visit the set a couple of times. And we weren't in meetings, so we didn't really get to know him at this because we were freelancing at this point. It was, we were guests.
Yes, yeah.
So that was basically, and we were more interested in meeting Bill Bixby and seeing how things worked. But I had a huge crush on Bixby from when he was Courtship of Eddie's father. It was very exciting. So
yeah.
And anyway, so that's all I know about Ken Gilbert. I did notice. I think it was something I wouldn't have known at the time, but once I was on the series, I would have noticed this. There was a moment. There was a Bill stunt double for the entire run of the show, and one of his dearest friends was a man named Frank Orsatti. He ended up directing a couple of episodes.
He did, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Frank was, and Frank had the ability to. He was Bill, but somewhat buffed up, muscular, and he was a stuntman. He wasn't his camera double; he was his stunt double. And he had the dark hair. They had the same haircut for years. And I remember when I was watching it this weekend, I saw when he's in Elliot's cage, and it's an angle to the back left side of the cage, and Bill disappears into a corner, and they don't cut. There's no cut in the film, but you see him disappear into the corner of the cage, and then he comes out sideways. I'm doing it actually while I'm sitting here, but you can't see me. He comes out sideways at his back. His back was to us when he went in the corner, and it's still to us. And I went, oh, it's Frank. And then the second I saw him, I knew that it was Frank, that Frank had been hiding in the corner so they could do a single shot without breaking and cutting away to the stuntman, where it would look like Bill, and he gets picked up and thrown and all this stuff. It was really quite funny, but he had the ability to make it look like he had a way of snapping his head when David Banner was being, beaten or whatever. That made it look like he was in a lot more, that he was really being beaten up. He was a great stunt guy, but it was really funny to see that they did this clever little thing where Bill disappears for half a second, and then it's his double that comes out. So, next time you watch it, you'll notice it.
I will. I'll definitely look out for that. Yeah. Well, obviously, I only watched it quite recently, but yeah, that probably escaped me, that little detail.
Oh yeah.
You see things in a different light when they're pointed out to you, don't you? You never see them the same again. Right. Oh, now we know that he was hiding there. Yes. So now this idea, of course, originally it was just pitched, as you said. How about David Banner at the zoo?
Yeah.
So how did this sort of develop into what we finally saw?
It's called The Hulk at the Zoo, not David Banner.
The Hulk at the Zoo. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we loved the idea. We sort of had the idea coming in that there's we pitched The Hulk at the Zoo, but we also then said, look, here's what we're thinking is that David has this beast within him that he can't control. So what if we're talking about animals who have no control of their anger, and that was the foundation of it. And the gorilla made the most sense because that would be the biggest challenge to the Hulk. David would have at that point. It was very clear the first season that everywhere David went, it was to try to find a cure. So he goes to the zoo because he's read about the work they're doing, the research that this woman is doing, Claudia. By the way, Claudia is Jill's middle name. So I love that name. I've named a number of characters Claudia because it's such a great. So, but that's where anyway. So she and also again, like I said, I was watching it and thinking, oh, that's so Jill, and wondering where my part was in it. But I was there. And we were doing it together. But she did have good ideas, and I did know structure. It was the idea that animals were being used and abused for money. And at the time, it was really just before, it was 1980, 79, 80. So the fur coats were still being worn. Some of the awareness we have now was not. The animals there was no real concern from the general public about, animals disappearing, breeds disappearing, and species rather. And so the idea was that these animals were being shipped out of South Africa and then dying from some strange, they're valuable animals. They're dying from some strange virus. And we come to discover that they have had diamonds sewn into their bellies or into their bodies, into their intestinal tract. So that when they arrive, though how they did that without killing them, I don't think we ever thought about. But
yeah.
But they were able to. It's like, because at that time people were being what they called mules. People were swallowing large amounts of drugs and stuff, and coming across the border.
Yeah.
And so it was that concept, but using animals. And this is a woman. We thought it was, and where we got help, I think, from the staff, it was Jim Harriet then. Nick Correa wasn't part of it yet, or Jim Hirsch. It was Jim Harriet and Ken Johnson. I saw Jim a few weeks ago. I still see that we became family. And Nick Correa's daughter is like a god niece to me. We're all very close. Anyway, she this is a woman who's on the verge of uncovering the secrets and that David needs. And I love that moment, what I'd forgotten about, when she says, "Have you read the collected works of David Banner?" And he was like, "What?" We love the idea. We love the idea of a little romance, which we got to do, but we had, we put the brakes on it because we couldn't have him kissing a different girl every week. That just wasn't going to be the show. But we loved, that idea that she's someone that he could he stay, that would have developed into a relationship. Clearly, they had so much in common. And the bad guys were the bad guys. That's, they're sort of, you try to give them a different motivation. You try to make them not totally stereotypical. Dabbs Greer was a terrific old actor who'd been around forever, and we sort of made him not really want to do it. He's doing it so that he can help the zoo, not to line his own pockets. He's doing it because they need more money, and he's doing it, and he's seen enough animals come and go that he probably is like not as worried about them. But so that was the idea behind it, as best as I can remember, and to give some really great Hulk out moments, and to give Bixby a point of view, which was critical in everything you did. David always had to have a purpose and a point of view, and the occasions when he didn't was intentional. I remember reading a description of one of the shows online that said something like, David wants to lay low for this episode, basically. So there are times where, but David it was early on. I think we were may have been the first aired show. Times Square might have been before us.
I think it was the boxing one was the first one. I think opened up the season, then you were the second.
That was Times Square. The opening up the series was the pilot. There were two. The pilot.
They were kind of like shown like sort of like as a
Times Square, and then
two separate things, weren't they? Yeah, and then the series was like a shortened season, wasn't it? The first actual season was 10 episodes, I think.
11, or although it was 12, including the pilot. 10.
If you include the two pilots, yeah. I'm
sure if Matheson and Solazzi wrote, Richard and Tom wrote Times Square, or if they wrote Airplane. I can't remember which one they wrote. But they wrote one of those two. They did several others for us, and we became quite close. And Tom's wife sang at my wedding, and she came out to visit me when I was opening my play in Nashville last year. And I mean, we still see them. We spend every Christmas decorating their tree. So it's like I'm telling you, relationships. This was our first network series, and relationships were made that have endured, which is really lovely. So anyway,
it's very special when that happens, Karen, isn't it? Yeah, because that doesn't happen in every walk of life,
No,
we stay friends. Moved it a lot. Yeah,
sure did.
And then you were really, you really had such a long time with it. It must have been pretty, for the most part, must have been very pleasurable because you stuck with it for nearly its entire,
exactly.
5-year run.
Jill stayed right through the end. I moved on to another. I actually was moved over to Simon and Simon for a short period.
Yeah.
We were both under contract to Universal, so we would go to other units. Jill went over to Magnum after the Hulk was over. I went to Simon and Simon, and then I went to another show. It was a little less action, a little more character oriented, which was good for me. I needed that called, I can't remember, Shannon is what it was called. And it only lasted one season. And then we just started moving onward and upward from there, which was great. And I did pilots for Aaron Spelling and Movies of the Week for Fox. And I worked on General Hospital, which is our top soap opera here, for almost 15 years. When I left daytime and moved into, because prime time started to change, so it was less action adventure and more procedural, which I don't care for. And a friend of mine was producing General Hospital and said, join me. So I did, and I loved it. I did it for 15 years, became a head writer at one point, and did a spin-off show. And now I'm writing, I have a Broadway bound musical. So that I've written that I'm sort of out of television the last 8 years, I think. And are you getting this down?
What's the musical, by the way? What can you reveal what it is? Or?
The musical is called Part of the Plan. Yes, we've already had our world premiere in Nashville, Tennessee in September of 2017. And we're looking for we have an offer to be in on the East Coast. I don't want to name the name yet because the offer is made, the contract's not signed, but it will be. And I'm also talking to a West End theater about it. I met with when I was there, and it's an original story using the music. There was a guy that you may remember from the 70s and 80s, a singer-songwriter named Dan Fogelberg, and he had several hit songs. And was a poet. He was part of the same group of musicians that formed the Eagles and Jackson Browne, and he was part of that whole group. And there's a couple of, you should look him up because there's a couple of his songs that you'll recognize.
I have to look him up because the name doesn't ring a bell at the moment. No.
But we got the rights to. A woman came to me who and wanted me to write it with her, and we got the rights to Dan Fogelberg's music. And created an original story, a very American story that follows a young girl, 16-year-old girl, wealthy, young woman who gets pregnant by the Jewish waiter at her parents' country club. And her parents force her to give the baby up. She never tells the guy because he's going to go off and make his life as a musician. And she doesn't want to hold him back. So she's forced to give the child up in 1950. And it follows her and the boy she gives up through the next 3 decades, from the post-World War II boom times to the social and sexual revolution of the 60s into the political upheaval of the 70s. It's quite a beautiful, heartfelt story, and we make grown men cry because it's about mothers and sons and brothers. Mm. And we're very proud of it, and hopefully we'll be moving into our next steps this year. So that's what we've been working on now, and I'm fine being away from TV for a while. It's changing a lot. I'm still very active in the Writers Guild of America. I used to be on the board, and I said, with the veterans, and I taught episodic television at Loyola Marymount University, LMU, for a while, and so life is good. And I get to travel. It's all good.
So I want to thank you very much, Karen, for all your memories about the Beast Within, and those early days, working on the Hulk. It's been great talking to you.
I've enjoyed it. I feel like I should break into a few bars of the Lonely Man theme now as I walk away into the sunset.
Yeah, do.
I enjoyed it, Frank. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen, and I hope you enjoyed it too, guys. And we'll be back with more from the Incredible Hulk podcast very soon. So until then, take care.